Aye, right, folks. Welcome back to Glesga News. Right, okay, I'm on the record again. Right, okay, there's still lots of stuff happening around about Neil Lennon and Celtic, and I think this is one of the most calm and collected interviews yet about the situation. I'm not going to talk about how the fans feel, because we know the fans can get rabid at times, because this season there seems to be a season above all seasons, and everybody's forgetting about the other 9 seasons that they've won. I mean, that's basically it. I'll get rid of the manager. That's it. He's did the terrible thing of losing this season, even though they're winning quadruple this and all the rest of it. Right? It's from a neutral perspective, it just looks like absolute madness. From the other side of the city, the guy Steven Gerrard, who's ahead in the league this year, but he won nothing for 2 years. Nobody was doing all this, Oh, wait a minute, you told us you were going to do something. You're a big name and all that. But 2 years he won nothing. And they just sat and waited and waited. But Neil Lennon's won everything. He's won everything that you can win, apart from the fucking European Cup. Right? Anyway. And then you've got all these guys, they call them pundits. It's just ex-footballers who can't get off our telly screens. I mean, they're sicking me, the majority of them, right? They're all sycophants, the majority of them, right? With some notable exceptions, I know that, right? But they just jump on the bandwagon, try to make a name for themselves. They might not have done it in football, but they sometimes seem to think they're going to do it on the telly by being controversial. But there's one guy who's never been like that, and it's Paul Lambert. Paul Lambert has always been a steady ship. When he played for Scotland, when he played for Celtic, whoever he played for, even as a manager, he's been a steady ship. So his opinions are a valued addition. And so I've picked this article out. I don't really like to get involved in the West of Scotland thing, the Rangers Celtic thing, because it doesn't do my channel any good. At the moment I've only got a wee channel. I don't want it to just disintegrate. There's plenty of Celtic channels. I go to them, and there's plenty of Rangers channels, and I go to them to see what's going on. That's basically it. But from my perspective, I'm just going to read this because I do this anyway. So this here is an article by Craig Swan. I think it's quite a good article in the sense that it's fair. Anyway, the title is Paul Lambert calls out old Celtic teammates over Neil Lennon sack shouts and asks, could you imagine that at Rangers? Lambert understands some of the stick that has come his old partner's way, but doesn't believe it would be replicated across the other side of the city, which would be Glasgow. That's Paul Lambert there, right? The Ipswich boss is fully aware flack flies when a Celtic manager is on a run of 7 wins out of 22 games. Right, that's a given. Everybody knows that. Opinions are a valuable part of football. It's just Lambert has been left surprised at some of the outlets of this opinion and some of the opinions that are being made. In particular, he's been irked at the ease in which some ex-teammates have had a pop at Lennon. Lambert hasn't held back. He's made his feeling known as he said, I found that particularly disappointing. And there's 2 friends there, obviously in opposing benches or whatever, right? Maybe that was a friendly, who knows? I don't know. And that all the images here are not my images. These are courtesy of the Daily Record or the SNS group. So he goes on to say, I'm not expecting everyone to be a Neil Lennon cheerleader and absolve him from all blame. Not at all. And I don't think Neil would expect that of anyone. When Ali McCoy was struggling as Rangers manager, did you see his former teammates lining up to have a pop? Absolutely not. Could you imagine the likes of Ian Durrant, Ian Ferguson or John Brown saying Ali should have been sacked a few years ago? It would never have happened. Had the shoe been on the other foot this season and Steven Gerrard had gone a 3rd successive season without silverware, and that's the point. That's the point I made, right? And he's making it subtly but fairly. I'm still not sure those guys I've named, right, which would be Ian Durrant, Ian Ferguson or John Brown, who didn't even share a dressing room with Steven Gerrard, would have called for him to be sacked. It's about expectations, isn't it? Clearly, it's about expectations. Celtic have had a lot of success, right? And so their expectations is for more success. That's the difference. Rangers weren't having any success in terms of the Premier League, Scottish Premier League. So their expectations were of just improvement. Neil Lennon's got that kind of thing running against him. Doesn't make him a bad manager, but he says, there are many who I totally respect and I would consider them fair and balanced. Maybe I'm blinkered. Maybe I'm in the wrong for thinking if you have nothing nice to say about a friend, then don't say anything at all. And that's true. These pundits can say to the network, listen, I consider Neil Lennon to be a friend of mine, right? I'll talk about the failures on the park, etc., but I'm not going to ever talk about what I think he should be sacked, this or that should happen, or the board should do this and that, or the rest of it. You know, I'll leave that to Celtic hierarchy. So he goes on to say, but I just don't think you need to call for a former teammate to be sacked. He goes on to say this, I'm not going to name names, but I did call one up the other night and told him he was a disgrace. He couldn't wait to get out of Celtic when the chance to move to England came about. I reminded him of that. I reminded him of how much Lenny gave him both on and off the park. Now, I wonder who that is. My first thoughts would be, I mean, I don't know the history of Celtic in terms of their players, but I would say that was Charlie Nicholas. Because Charlie Nicholas has been really out of order. He's already naming people for the job and all that. You know, he just doesn't give a monkeys. He bolted right out of Celtic. Now, it might not be him. I don't think it's Sutton. While former colleagues can't help Lennon, the players inside the dressing room can. So he basically goes on to have a go at some of the players that don't seem to be performing this year. And he's got a valid point there. He says he needs to share his share of how things have unfolded this season, but how about the players taking some responsibility? He says Edouard, as an example, probably has an eye on moving to the Premier League. He goes on to say, does Edouard not think that the bosses in the Premier League, English Premier League, are looking up and going, well, you don't seem to be fighting for your team, Edouard. So is that what's going to happen when you come here, when you get fed up, or maybe you think there's a better offer? Whether that's true or no, it's a bit of speculation, but what I'm saying is, you know, that's human nature, what Paul Lambert's pointing to, you know. He says, and this is a good point, he says, Celtic fans will always forgive a lack of quality if they see you're giving everything for the shirt. And I would say that's true of all sports, not just Celtic or Rangers, you know. Anyway, I think that's enough on that. That's a good article. And it's, see, there's Charlie Nicholas over here saying, Charlie Nicholas believes Xavi, he's an ex-Barcelona guy, would be the perfect Neil Lennon replacement. What's he going to want to bring in? You need to spend about £50 million to try and get up to his standards. Anyway, and I'm not talking about Charlie Nicholas standards because he doesn't have any. Right, okay folks, if you like the content, hit the like button, share and subscribe, because that's all I've got to say about that. Peace out.
How dare you!